This video is brought to you by Manscaped, the premium brand for men's grooming and hygiene products. Every day, Manscaped asks men a simple question. When you look around your bathroom and your shower, do you like the huge collection of drugstore brands? Or are you still using that same overpriced deodorant and body wash goop that you used when you were a teenager? Maybe, Manscaped. Maybe. Manscaped is changing the game. They're going beyond the groin, if you will. Lots of men know Manscaped for their great products designed specifically for their Johnny Cochran, but there's a lot more these days than just the trimmers of yesteryear. So check out these bundle kits. We got the Perfect Package 4.0, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0 waterproof trimmer with its skin-safe trimming technology, which is nice for where this thing trims. They've also got their ball deodorant. Let's pop that out here. This one's all nice and new. They sent me two, so I use one at home, and you guys don't have to look at that. Ball deodorant, their ball toner, all of that good stuff. Sorry, their ball spray. Now, if you're ready to upgrade that starter set, the Performance Package 4.0 adds in the Weed Whacker nose and ear trimmer, which is brilliant. And if you need to stop the endless drugstore runs, Manscaped has you covered with their Platinum Package. Everything you need from the previous bundle, plus the ultra premium shower products and a deodorant stick that I have somewhere here. Yes, all of this good stuff. And it just looks better. Like, I don't know, I'm not going to name the brands that I use. It's just a collection of random brands. This all looks brilliant. Best of all, when you buy the bundle, you get not one, but two free gifts included in your purchase. The Shed luxury leather travel bag and some very comfortable anti-chafing Manscaped boxer briefs. I think I have that thing. Yes, same place. Look at that. Isn't that nice? Go to manscaped.com and get 20% off with 3 international shipping, plus the 2 free gifts when you use the promo code BRAINFOOD20. That's code BRAINFOOD20 at manscaped.com. Thank you, Manscaped. Now today's video. Drones, whether raining down death and destruction on the battlefield, capturing sweet snowboarding and mountain biking moves for YouTube, helping farmers inspect their fields, or driving aviation authorities mad by wandering into controlled airspace, drones seem to be just about everywhere these days. Using the latest in remote control and automatic guidance technology, drones, more properly known as unmanned aerial vehicles or UAVs, are able to perform tasks that are otherwise too dangerous, exhausting, or expensive for manned aircraft. But whether you think drones are a boon or a menace to society, you have a surprising institution to thank for their existence. None other than the greatest of all dream machines, Hollywood. This is the surprising story of how Tinseltown led to the rise of the drone, and how drones gave us one of the silver screen's most enduring legends. The first public demonstration of a remotely controlled vehicle took place in 1898 when inventor extraordinaire and internet heartthrob Nikola Tesla stunned onlookers at the Madison Square Garden Electrical Exhibition by piloting a small electrically powered boat in a tank of water using only invisible radio waves. Demonstrating the remarkable foresight for which he was famous, Tesla predicted that remote-controlled boats, submarines, torpedoes, and even aircraft would one day play a key role in warfare, though, like many inventors before in 6, he incorrectly assumed that such terrible weapons would eventually make war obsolete. However, it would be another 20 years before Tesla's predictions would begin to be realized. The first aerial drone, as we know it, appeared at the end of the First World War, the brainchild of one of the great unsung aviation pioneers, Elmer Sperry. Born in 1860, Sperry was a prolific inventor, developing, among other things, self-propelled mining equipment that greatly improved the efficiency of coal extraction. After becoming violently seasick on a transatlantic voyage in 1898, Sperry began investigating the use of large gyroscopes to mitigate the effect of waves on a ship's hull. Though the stabilization system was never implemented due to its high cost, this work led directly to the development of Sperry's most important invention, the gyrocompass. Magnetic compasses aboard large ships had always been unreliable due to interference from the ship's steel hull, variations in the Earth's magnetic field, and other factors. By operating independently of magnetic fields, the gyrocompass allowed for accurate navigation over large distances and proved highly successful, being installed aboard the warships of nearly every seagoing nation by the outbreak of the First World War. Sperry later developed a lightweight version that could be installed in an aircraft, revolutionizing aerial navigation. In 1914, Sperry and his son Lawrence developed a system which used 2 gyroscopes and a series of electrical servos to stabilize an aircraft in roll and yaw. First demonstrated in June that year before stunned judges from the Aero Club of France, the Sperry Sperry's no-hands flying system was the world's first effective autopilot. While intended to improve navigation and reduce pilot fatigue on long-duration flights, the Sperrys immediately recognized its potential to create pilotless aircraft. Thus, in 1916, the Sperrys joined forces with fellow inventor Peter Hewitt to create the Hewitt-Sperry automatic airplane. The ancestor of modern cruise missiles, the Hewitt-Sperry was a small pilotless aircraft designed to be launched from a ship by a steam catapult. The pair of gyroscopes linked to the rudder and ailerons kept the vehicle on course towards the target, while an aneroid barometer maintained its altitude. At a preset range, the aircraft would automatically dive onto its target or release a load of bombs. While the US Navy showed some interest in the system, it declined to further pursue the project. However, after the United States entered the First World War in 1917, the Sperry succeeded in convincing the Navy to re-evaluate their aerial torpedo for use against German U-boats. But while testing revealed that the weapon was too inaccurate for use against ships at sea, the Navy realized the concept might just work over land. And so, in November 1917, the US Army assembled a team to develop its own aerial torpedo, which was given the absurdly American code name of Project Liberty Eagle. The Army's team was a veritable who's who of contemporary inventors and included the likes of Orville Wright, Henry Ford, and Thomas Midgley, the latter of which was the infamous creator of leaded gasoline and then later the ozone-destroying refrigerant Freon. And heading this dream team was a now forgotten but equally prolific inventor named Charles Kettering, perhaps best known for developing the electric automobile starter motor. The team's task was to develop an inexpensive unmanned aircraft which could travel at least 60 kilometers and deliver 100 kilograms of explosives onto an enemy target. Dubbed the Kettering Bug, the weapon they came up with resembled a conventional biplane with a length of 3.8 meters and a wingspan of 4.5 meters, powered by a 40 horsepower four-cylinder engine. To minimize cost, the wings and fuselage were made of wood covered in cardboard and papier-mâché, while the engine produced by Ford was optimized for mass production and cost only $40. In total, each Bug cost only $400, could cruise at 80 kilometers per hour, and weighed 240 kilograms, including 90 kilograms of explosives. The weapon was designed to be launched from a small catapult, whereupon the Sperry's gyroscope and barometer system would guide it to its target. Prior to launch, the operators would determine how many engine revolutions it would take for the Bug to reach its target and program this into an onboard odometer. When that number was reached, the engine would automatically shut off and the wings would detach, allowing the explosive-laden fuselage to plummet towards its target. The complexity of the Kettering Bug meant that development was slow, with the first test flight not taking place until September 14th, 1918. It was an inauspicious start. After flying only 100 meters, the Bug experienced engine trouble and crashed onto the ground. The next test, on October 2nd, was even less successful, with the Bug suddenly pulling up, stalling, and crashing immediately after launch. Further tests were more successful, though by this time the First World War had already ended. Nonetheless, testing continued into the 1920s, with 45 Kettering Bugs being built in total. However, technology of the time was inadequate to make the Bug a reliable and effective weapon of war, and the project was eventually abandoned. Meanwhile, the first practical advances in military UAV technology were being made across the Atlantic. Starting in 1917, the British Royal Flying Corps and de Havilland Aircraft Company began developing a series of experimental radio-controlled aircraft using a control system invented by RFC engineer Archibald Lowe. On March 21st, 1917, one of these aircraft, codenamed the Aerial Target, or AT, became the first powered unmanned aircraft to fly under radio control. The RFC hoped to develop the AT into an aerial torpedo capable of delivering explosives onto a target with pinpoint accuracy, but the war ended before the system could see combat. Nonetheless, de Havilland carried on its radio control research into the 1920s and 1930s, though by this time the goal had shifted from producing weapons to producing targets. In the interwar years, trainee fighter pilots practiced aerial gunnery by shooting at long target banners or drogues towed behind another aircraft. The system had numerous disadvantages. For one thing, the tow plane and drogue flew relatively slowly and in a straight line, making them a poor representation of an enemy target. The attacking fighter pilots also could not tell whether they had hit the target until the tow plane had landed, while most concerning of all, the crew of the tow plane were vulnerable to being hit by stray gunfire. Thus, in 1935, de Havilland introduced the DH-82 Queen Bee, a radio-controlled target based on the Tiger Moth training aircraft. While the aircraft's front cockpit and controls were retained to allow for manned test flight and ferrying between airfields, the rear cockpit was closed off and fitted with radio control equipment. The servos that transmitted radio commands to the control surfaces were powered by air supplied by a small propeller-powered pump mounted to the side of the fuselage. Interestingly, it is the Queen Bee which originated the modern term drone for unmanned aircraft. Just as male bees or drones mate once with the queen before dying, target drones like the Queen Bee were designed to be used once before being blown out of the sky. Produced in both land and sea variants, the Queen Bee was highly successful, with over 400 being built before the outbreak of the Second World War. Several other aircraft, including the Fairey 3, Airspeed Wasp, and Mars Martinet, would also be converted into target drones until 1952, when the Royal Air Force adopted the GAF Yindavik, a purpose-built jet-powered target drone developed by Australia's government air factories. But while the British pioneered the use of target drones, it was the Americans who would first produce and use them on a massive scale. Enter the Hollywood connection. Our story begins in the mid-1930s with British film actor Reginald Denny. While largely forgotten today, in his day Denny was a prolific actor, appearing in more than 200 films and television episodes over his 50-year career. Born in 1891 into an acting family, Denny began acting on stage at the age of 6 and appeared in his first silent film in 1912. He was also an amateur boxing champion. On the outbreak of the First World War in 1914, Denny suspended his acting career to join the Royal Flying Corps, becoming an observer and air gunner in a home defense night fighter squadron. Denny was wounded by friendly fire during a training exercise and spent several months in hospital. While he recovered sufficiently to complete his training, the war ended before he could see action. After the war, Denny moved to California, where he flew with the 13 Black Cat stunt flying troupe and continued to act in silent films. In the late 1920s, the advent of talking pictures caused a shift in Denny's career. Due to his English accent and advancing age, he became increasingly in demand for supporting character roles and was often cast as the quintessential English gentleman or military officer. It is also during this period that Denny discovered a new obsession. Sometime in the early 1930s, Denny agreed to help a neighbor's son fly a model aircraft. When the model crashed, Denny set about building a new one. He soon became hooked, and in 1934, he opened up a hobby shop in Los Angeles, selling flying model aircraft of his own design under the brand name Denny Plane. These aircraft were powered by miniature Dennymite brand gasoline engines developed by California Institute of Technology graduate Walter Reiter and considered the very best in the field. Soon after, Denny learned of the problems the US Army Air Corps was having training its fighter pilots in aerial gunnery. Not only was the traditional target drogue method inaccurate and dangerous to the towplane crews, but it cost nearly $300 per flight to tow a target, a lot of money in the cash-strapped 1930s. Realizing that one of his Denny Plane flying models would make a more realistic and cheaper target, in 1936, Denny, along with financier Paul Whittier, founded the Radioplane Company and began developing a target drone to present to the Army. Radioplane's first prototype, the RP-1, had a wingspan of 4 meters, was powered by a 3-horsepower 2-cylinder Reiter engine, and featured radio control gear developed by inventor Kenneth Case. In February 1938, Denny demonstrated the RP-1 for the Army, who were impressed enough to greenlight further development. Denny continued to refine the design, and in May 1939, his fourth prototype, imaginatively dubbed the RP-4, was officially adopted by the Army under the designation OQ-1. The OQ-1 would remain in service until 1941, when it was replaced by the OQ-2, which featured a more powerful 7-horsepower engine, twin counter-rotating propellers, a higher top speed of 136 km per hour, and a parachute for recovery at the end of its mission. In addition to the Army Air Force, the OQ-2 was also used by the US Navy under the designation TDD-1 for Target Drone Denny. Finally, in 1943, Radioplane introduced its most successful model yet, the OQ-3, which was cheaper and even faster than its predecessor with a top speed of 163 kilometers an hour. While this was still far slower than most contemporary fighter aircraft, the OQ-3's small size made it appear faster, making it difficult for fighter pilots and anti-aircraft gunners to hit it. In total, Radioplane would build 9,403 OQ-3s and 14,891 drones of all kinds during the war. Wartime demand turned the fledgling company into a major defense contractor almost overnight, with a 6,500 square meter factory in Van Nuys, California, capable of turning out 50 drones per day. After the war, Reginald Denny supervised the conversion of 4 Grumman F-6F Hellcat fighters into radio-controlled drones. These drones, launched from the US Navy aircraft carrier USS Shangri-La, were able to penetrate and collect samples from the radioactive mushroom cloud during the 1946 Operation Crossbow atomic bomb test at Bikini Atoll. But with wartime demand for target drones rapidly dwindling, in 1948 Denny sold his stake in the Radioplane Company and returned to acting, making his final film film appearance as Commodore Shimatlap in 1966's Batman the Movie. Reginald Denny died of a stroke at the age of 75 on June 16, 1967, and was buried at Forest Lawn, Los Angeles Hills Cemetery. Meanwhile, the company Denny founded continued to prosper. Shortly after the war, the Radioplane Company introduced its most successful product, the OQ-19 Sheldark, also known as the Basic Training Target, or BTT. 4 meters long and with a wingspan of 3.5 meters, the OQ-19 was powered by a 72 horsepower, 4-cylinder engine and had a top speed of 324 kilometers per hour. Launched using a bungee-powered catapult or a small solid rocket booster, it was guided by radio from the ground and returned to Earth using a parachute. Though, like earlier radioplane drones, the OQ-19 was designed to be expendable, in practice it was usually used to tow a traditional target drone, allowing the same drone to be reused multiple times. When used to train the crews of radar-guided anti-aircraft guns, the drone could be fitted with wingtip radar reflectors to give it the radar cross-section of a larger aircraft. Over 63,000 OQ-19s were built, being used by multiple countries worldwide well into the 1980s. However, in 1952, the Radioplane Company was acquired by Northrop Corporation, becoming the Radioplane Division and later the Ventura Division. Northrop, which merged with Grumman in 1994, continues to produce drones to this day, including the highly successful RQ-4 Global Hawk surveillance UAV. Radioplane was certainly not the first or only group to produce unmanned aerial vehicles during the war. In 1944, the US Army Air Force launched Operation Aphrodite, an attempt to use radio-controlled explosive-laden B-17 bombers to destroy German secret weapons installations on the French coast. The operation was unsuccessful, with one notable accident resulting in the death of Lieutenant Joseph P. Kennedy Jr., elder brother of future US President John F. Kennedy. Infamously, the Germans also developed the V-1 flying bomb, whose control and guidance system were remarkably similar to the 1910s-era Kettering Bug, while both sides developed a variety of remote-controlled rocket and glide bombs for use against shipping and precision targets, including the German Henschel HS-293 and Fritz X and the American Azon and Raisin. However, Radioplane and its founder, Reginald Denny, were the first to turn military drones into a viable, large-scale industry. As a coda of sorts to this story, just as Hollywood gave birth to the drone in turn gave birth to one of Hollywood's greatest legends. In June 1944, Sergeant David Conover, a photographer and public relations officer with the US Army's 1st Motion Picture Unit, was sent to the Radioplane factory in Van Nuys to shoot morale-boosting pictures of female war production workers. While touring the factory, Conover came across a 19-year-old woman assembling engines for OQ-3 target drones. Struck by her beauty, Conover arranged for the woman to book a modeling audition. In August 1945, she was hired by the Blue Book Model Agency, and the rest is history. That woman's name was Norma Jean Doherty. You may know her better as Marilyn Monroe.